Welcome to WMTV. You're watching Tribe Choices at the Movies. This is a very special episode about war films. Hoo-ah! I'm going to start off the show with a review of one of my favorite war films, Apocalypse Now. It's got great actors, Robert Duvall, Martin Sheen, Lawrence Fishburne. It's got a great director, and Francis Ford Coppola. I can't forget Marlon Brando's in the film too. It's got excellent cinematography, carefully constructed shots. They spent over 300 hours filming for this movie, and only 3 made it to the final film. And although it may be draining to watch, once you've seen it, it's one of the most rewarding experiences of your life. Listen up, maggots. Today is a very special show because we have 3 special guests here on this panel to discuss war films. To the left of me, we have Lizzy Pelletier, who is a budding young filmmaker. To the right of me, we have Victor Rosello. He's a retired Army Colonel, and he was in the military for 30 years. And to the right of him, we have Lauren Sue, a fellow film critic. She is excellent. So, Lauren, Victor, Elizabeth, any reactions to my review?
Yes, absolutely. From the standpoint of what a military movie portrays, I obviously, like most military men or women, soldiers, airmen, marines, sailors, we look at a movie with a very critical eye. I did not like Apocalypse Now because I thought it did not reflect well on the military, and I really thought that many of the scenes were almost exaggerated, very surreal, very theatrical. My walk away from Apocalypse Now is Robert Duvall with his Stetson, cavalry Stetson, saying, "Don't you just love the smell of napalm in the morning?"
I love the smell of napalm in the morning. You know, one time we had a hail bomb for 12 hours. When it was all over, I walked up.
And, comments like that, really portray the military in a bad light, I feel. I think that movie, I realized they shot 300 hours, and they got 3 hours of movie from it. They should have just done House of Darkness, or Heart of Darkness, from Joseph Conrad, and they would have portrayed the movie in a better light than using the military as props for the purpose of establishing a setting. I love the music from the Flight of the Valkyrie, by the way. But I thought that using that in context of helicopters coming in and machine gunning all the villagers and all that, again, reflects very poorly. So I didn't think it was a good war movie. Maybe it's from an artistic standpoint, it's great cinematography, good music, had the Rolling Stones playing Satisfaction. I mean, all
and the
that
Doors,
is
too.
Great, but I thought that the theme as portrayed using the military or war as a backdrop got a thumbs down from me.
Yeah, go ahead.
As someone in the military, what do you look for in a war movie? What's your angle on it?
Well, I think that first of all, we're very critical because we're looking at things that we can relate to, and if we can't relate to them, we ask why. I mean, are they saluting properly? Are the actors saluting properly? Are they wearing their uniform correct? Are the rank and the insignia, are all those on right? And by and large, Hollywood messes that up. It's just, for us, it looks like a clown performing because they don't pay respect to the uniform.
Are there any examples of that, of any films like that?
Oh gosh, yes, there are many examples.
Perhaps MASH or something.
Well, MASH is probably the extreme case of where, again, you're using a war as a backdrop to a comedy. So, the actors are supposedly military men and women, But the fact of the matter is that, you know, that's not true in nature. I mean, you don't play that kind of comedy routines and people dressing up in Hawaiian shirts, and I mean, that would not be tolerated in any military organization. And my concern is that people walk away with the wrong impression about what the military is or isn't. There's parts of it that are true, but by and large, it's just again using the military as almost as a joke. So I'm very critical of that. I want to take away things from movies. I want to learn from them. Many movies have portrayed war in a very realistic light. The movie Glory, Civil War movie, that portrayed the Black Regiment as it fought valiantly in war, did a tremendous job of capturing what we call the moral domain of war, which is the essence of bravery, fighting away fear, standing in front of the enemy without blinking, and great movie for that. Gladiator, Russell Crowe, Maximus, good movie too, portraying the Roman war machine and how it was able to defeat its adversaries, how they systematically fought war. Braveheart, Mel Gibson, another great example of movies that attempt to portray a historical figure, but in the light of warfare and the savagery of war.
They may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
Those are all great examples, and I can mention a few more. Zulu, The Man Who Would Be King, which is also a favorite of mine. Even the movie Aliens has a great, and by the way, Aliens was also shown in some of the military schools because it shows how units meld together, how the military works together. In thick and thin, they're there for each other, and they fight gallantly when they have to, and they have a good time when the opportunity presents itself.
Yeah, so do you think that even a film like Aliens that's, science fiction and has like sort of unrealistic elements can maybe, get at the essence of some sort of reality?
Yes. I do.
Yeah.
I think war transcends time. We can talk about war in the past, we can talk about war in the future, because man, in essence, is the same. I mean, through the years, you're still dealing with discipline, you're still dealing with fear, you're still dealing with bravery. There are elements portrayed in there that will be as true today as they were back in the time of the Romans. And Aliens, with the S, I thought did a great job of portraying that Marine squad, that Space Marine squad, and how they worked together, how they fought together, and excellent movie. That, like I said, we use it in some of our military schools. Saving Private Ryan, same thing, great movie. The moral domain of war, the fear, the essence, the savagery of war and combat, and the dilemmas that military personnel face in trying to deal with the law of land warfare or the Geneva Convention. In the case of when they had to make a decision as to whether to kill a German prisoner or abide by the conventions of Geneva, which required them to not kill the prisoner and somehow allow that person to make it back to a safe area.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a long answer to your question, but
that was great. Yeah.
So you'd say that verisimilitude, like accurateness of the truth, is your number one criteria?
Yes, I
for
think
judging. So not as in, I don't know. I guess that would make sense.
Yeah, like any professional. I mean, lawyers like to watch movies about Wall Street. Doctors like to make sure the X-ray machines are set, right. That everything is being articulated in medical terms. I think all professionals like to see themselves in a good light, and when it's not done that way, they feel like somehow they've been portrayed and less than the proper light.
So, the Vietnam War, which is what Apocalypse Now was about, is kind of a tough war to deal with. Is there a better movie that is more closer to the truth of the Vietnam War?
Yeah, movies like probably Platoon, and again, you got to be careful because they do tend to exaggerate, but at least it's more down to earth in dealing with the realities on the ground. Platoon comes to mind. Let's see, Hamburger Hill also, Hamburger Hill. Pork Chop Hill was Korea. Hamburger Hill was in Vietnam. And for the longest time, we the nation stayed away from filming Vietnam. That means
Yeah, it was
so
dark
sensitive.
blot.
I mean,
Yeah,
there was just a lot of pain still involved with memories of that war, and it was a terrible chapter in our nation's history. So as these directors decided to take that bold step in portraying the war, and more of what was happening there, what did occur there. Full Metal Jacket also comes to mind as a portrayal of Marines in combat and war, and basic boot camp, and how they transitioned to a war zone.
So, yeah. Full Metal Jacket, sorry, Lizzie. Full Metal Jacket, the first half of that was at the boot camp, military boot camp. How close was that to the truth? I'm just curious.
Well, it's a Marine boot camp. So I have not been in a Marine boot camp, but I've talked to Marines, and they say that it portrays the role of the drill sergeant, the drill instructor, very accurately.
I think his name's Arlie Ermey, is the actor's name.
Yeah. He's still.
He was in X-Men
and,
3. Yeah, last time.
Actually, pretty good guy. That is well depicted. The extreme pressure, the harassment that these kids are put under, trying to shape them, mold them into basically high school kids to become men. I mean, it's a tough transition for any military to take a high school kid, hanging out, after school, and life is good on my MP3 and my iPod, and now we're trying to give them the responsibility and discipline of an adult almost overnight, or at least in a 6-week period. Tough transition, but that's one way of kind of scaring the old out of them and then bringing in the new, which is their responsibilities as military soldiers or Marines or airmen.
Yeah, I was just wondering what you think about, sort of in a broader societal context, how we've sort of dealt with the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan through film. Like, we talked about how it took us a while to sort of be able to deal with Vietnam, and I was wondering if you think the same sort of thing has gone on with those wars, or if things like the Hurt Locker have kind of been sort of, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I'm surprised that there haven't been more films on the Iraq and Afghanistan, because that war has probably been viewed in a more favorable light. I think the military men and women deployed there have received better media attention, media coverage, and there's criticism, even within the military, there's criticism of our involvement there. But I'm surprised that it's something like the Hurt Locker, which, by the way, friends who are EOD, explosives, ordnance demolition, don't think it was portrayed realistically.
Oh, wow.
But still won an Oscar, so it just goes to show you. My favorite film from this era is Restrepo. Restrepo is the name of a forward operating base or an outpost in Afghanistan, and it portrays the lives of this infantry squad, an army squad. It's named Restrepo after one of the men that was part of that organization, that unit that was killed. So when they established this little outpost, they named it Restrepo. It's actually a Colombian last name. He was a Colombian American soldier. And it shows a lot of the realities, the extremes from sheer terror to absolute boredom of war, and the sacrifices, and that element of fear that's always there. You can't escape it. When you're in a war zone, you can't escape it. You feel like that bullet is out there, just looking with your name on it, just waiting to hit you. And that starts to work on you mentally and emotionally. I mean, you can only do that for so long without it eventually breaking you down. So I would recommend Restrepo if you want to see a little bit of our challenges in Afghanistan.
It's a documentary, isn't it?
It is a documentary, yes.
Okay. Isn't one of my favorite ones is I mean it's not about it's about Iraq, but it's not about the 2000s. It's about the Gulf War. Have you seen Three Kings?
Yes.
With Mark Wahlberg. I really like that because it showed how the role. A big part of it was what role the media had in portraying war, and how the Gulf War. Do you have any reactions to how the media has portrayed like the Gulf War, the wars in Afghanistan, or maybe even the Vietnam War?
Well, in the Vietnam War, I think it was a different era. The Vietnam War had so much negativity associated with it that the media portrayed our men and women in uniform as killers and baby killers, and it demonized the role of our professional soldiers. And the media was dealing with it back in the States while the men and women were fighting. And as you fast forward, beginning with Desert Storm, back in I get my timelines here, 91, where the media was allowed to, I'm sorry, not Desert 1, Desert Storm 2, or Operation Iraqi Freedom, where the embedded media was allowed to accompany the soldiers. I think you had a more unbiased view of what was happening because they were there and they were able to actually see, rather than from afar, as the case in Vietnam, able to see what those sacrifices that they were making. It was hard not to show the real story when you're there, under the same conditions of hardship and danger. I don't know if that answered your question, but I think media has gone back and forth. I think we're starting to see a turn where there seems to be the criticism towards Afghanistan is now starting to build, just like the same frustration, after when Vietnam seemed to, extend forever. And there's now more. You see more desires for us to pull out and stop, having our men and women killed.
Do you think overall Hollywood has a positive portrayal of military personnel, or I guess mixed, like everything? But
I think it's a great question because as you're saying that, I'm thinking back at the Sands of Iwo Jima and
the letters of, or is that different than the letters from
different?
Iwo Jima?
Yeah, this is way back.
Oh, this is way back.
50s, and when we used to portray, John Wayne and hitting the beach and that whole essence of Flying Tigers, showing that those American airmen who fought over Burma against the Japanese in China. Hollywood has had its moments. I think it's had its periods where there's been very realistic portrayals. Just recently, Red Tails came out about the Tuskegee Airmen. I don't know how accurate that was to portraying the true story of the Tuskegee Airmen, but it seemed believable. I didn't see, too much that was out of the ordinary, not out of the ordinary, but out of the realm of possibility. And I thought it was handled quite well, particularly the whole notion of black airmen as an experiment that the Army Air Corps took as a risk, quote unquote, putting black men to fly airplanes when most of the nation did not feel that the blacks could handle the stress and the responsibilities. An absurd notion, and the movie shows just how valiant and gallant these men were, and I liked it. I loved the bravery. I loved the air scenes and the combat and all that. You'd have to go down the list and say, yes, this did portray it correctly. No, it didn't. Yes, it did. No, it didn't. And it may be, you could get different reactions too from the viewers.
You guys, Lauren, do you have any questions?
Oh, well, I was just wondering. I don't watch war films extensively, but from what I've seen in the media and the films I do watch, it's more when films are critical of war and stuff, it's almost more of the idea of war and the idea of like the people at the top of the military, whereas like the individuals are usually portrayed in a more positive light. Do you like if a film manages to do that but it's still more distinctly negative, will you still like it, or would it just be offensive to you? Or
No, I think if it's portraying the reality of the leadership getting criticism, we would sit around in round tables in our military courses in our schools and just basically criticizing the leadership, the senior leadership in Vietnam. We recognize that mistakes were made and that we didn't have the right strategy. Some would argue our tactics were not effective. So we did a lot of self-criticism. I think it's appropriate if it's in fact the truth. But again, if I'm looking at it critically and it's the truth, I don't mind it portrayed negatively, as long as it's a true portrayal. But everyone is open game when you're talking about criticizing actions, particularly when the leadership could be blamed for errors or mistakes underground. The soldiers should be portrayed in a more positive light because they're there trying to do their job, trying to sustain themselves, trying to stay alive, and generally they don't act, with certain exceptions. We've had a few unfortunate incidents in Afghanistan and Iraq about criminal actions, which have been disciplined, but generally the soldiers is going to answer to the orders that they're given.
Do you pay any observation to how Hollywood, I guess this is kind of a vague question, but how Hollywood portrays the enemy? And so do you have any reactions to that?
Another good question. You say things like that, and it's like my mind starts going over these old reels of all the movies I've seen where, for example, was it...
Think Saving Private Ryan or something.
Well, see, Saving Private Ryan portrayed the German war machine as the true professionals that they were. The Germans were just trained and disciplined fighters and soldiers, and that movie portrayed them as what they were. These guys were as good, if not better, than we were, on the ground. I started to remember a movie, We Were Soldiers. We Were Soldiers, from the book by Hal Moore, We Were Soldiers Once and Young, that was from Vietnam, by the way. And actually, it's a very good portrayal of Vietnam. The very first combat action by a major U.S. Army unit, the Battle of the Ia Drang Valley. Mel Gibson portrayed Lieutenant Colonel Hal Moore during that movie. And it, along with other movies, never seemed to show the faces of the bad guys. It's always like there were these little minions running around the battlefield. You get a lot of foot shots. I think Platoon did that also.
Yeah, you saw villagers, but you didn't really see the soldiers.
It's like there was this faceless element that was there.
Yeah.
And it was hard to... when I'm able to see the face of the enemy, I can be a little bit more receptive, more sympathizing with them, because it becomes a real individual. When all I'm seeing is their weapons and their boots and running through the jungle, I see them more as just a mass of evil. So you have to be careful how that's portrayed. If that's what you want to do, portray good versus evil, and you don't allow evil to show its face, you simply show what their actions are, then it's a very effective way to show that, to depict that.
A good example of that. Have you seen War Horse?
Yes.
War Horse doesn't, the horse itself doesn't distinguish between good guys and bad guys. It's whoever's sympathetic to the horse is like a good guy. There's Germans, French.
Yeah.
He goes through all these different people. big in World War I. I think that's a very.
I thought it was very well balanced.
I thought it was
it showed that on both sides there were men with hearts. I mean, people that were actual real people. You know, they have emotions. They have their strengths and their weaknesses, and I liked that. I walked away from that feeling good because of everything involving, of course, the plight of the horse and how he was eventually.
And how those two, one from the German side,
German
one from
and the British soldier working together,
came out
which
to
is not
save
too
the horse.
untrue. You know, they came together in World War One during.
Yeah, and apparently there was a time. Yeah, there's a movie. I forget what it was called. And they played a game of soccer or something.
They did, and they shared pictures, photos. They exchanged chocolates and cigarettes and things like that. And then by then everybody's just tired of the war, It just but amazingly enough, after that ended, they went back to shooting each other. But I'm sure with some more reservation than before, because now you know that the guy you may be shooting at may have been the same person you were sharing a cup of coffee with, or smoking a cigarette with.
Cup of coffee.
We can split this one.
Okay, I've got one for Lizzy. So as a budding young filmmaker, would you recommend to Lizzy that she consult with maybe someone like you before she makes a war film?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So she should.
Well, if you want to do Apocalypse Now, then it doesn't matter. If you want to make sure that all the military that are looking at it are satisfied that the portrayal is realistic, see, why can't you do it? Why can't you do it all? I mean, why not bring in the experts and have them comment on, would we really do this? Would one of the biggest things we always criticize in war movies is, and most of your photographers would tell you, well, we can't do it the way you guys want. And that's whenever you have a group of soldiers, they're always grouped up together. See, in combat, you try to spread people apart so that you don't, one, as we jokingly always say, one hand grenade won't kill the entire unit. But you can't do that in a war movie because you got to get the shots of everybody. So you always see them kind of walking next to each other and all that. You need the technical support to make sure that you capture that in a very positive and accurate light, I feel.
And budget might be an issue there also, where it's hard to kind of, spend the money for a consultant and get all of the uniforms and stuff.
But unfortunately, if you don't get it right, then you're going to party the population that
Apocalypse Now had a huge budget.
Yeah, that's true.
Part of the population that would normally, I mean, you get a large military population that goes to these war movies.
Right.
Like this act of valor that we were talking about earlier. I mean, the Navy SEALs, going through their portraying the type of combat action that they normally would, because you're using real Navy SEALs in the movie. That's a movie that that probably comes as close to portraying the real thing as anything else. Can you not do that and still do your Apocalypse Now scenery and the boat going up the river and all the fog and all this veil of mystery and that evil river and what's it going to bring? When I get to the end of it, portraying that kind of that overdone theme, but seems to be still very popular, or it's had its moments. Yeah. Just like the series on TV, the river,
the river,
moving up the river and all the evil that that's at the end of the river. Yes, I guess you can. Maybe you can do it all.
Mm-hmm. Good question.
So yes, I would ask for a technician, somebody, not necessarily me, but someone that can at least look at it and say, man, you don't wear your hat that way.
Right.
Yeah. And the rank, you've got the rank insignia on the wrong side of the uniform, and stuff like that people pick up and say, oh,
just like
it loses its legitimacy.
Right.
I mean, it really does. I mean, I say, they didn't pay attention to that, then they really weren't really interested in.
And respect also.
Yeah. Speaking of that, Andrew can comment on this. You want to pan over to Andrew? He can comment on this. It'll be meta. Yeah. Andrew, who's in my war film class, taught by Professor Fred Corney. Are you recording?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Taught by said, what's Quentin Tarantino's latest movie?
Glorious Bastards.
Yeah. He said that movie was extremely disrespectful to the material. to history and how he arbitrarily had events happen how he saw fit, and he did not like that one movie one bit. Would you agree with him?
What was the name of the movie?
Inglourious Bastards.
Yeah, Tarantino's latest.
Well, and again, that was that's fiction. Okay.
Yeah.
Fiction. It reminds me a lot of the Dirty Dozen, going in behind enemy lines and destroying the leadership or the headquarters of the supreme German high command, whatever you're trying to portray. Hollywood loves that, I think they love having people go back in the rear lines, and destroying things. Good acting, it didn't portray for me. Not that a lot of special operations didn't take place, and a lot of behind the lines kind of work, and the French resistance and the special British agents parachuting behind enemy lines. Not that a lot of that didn't take place, but in terms of what this movie portrayed, I don't think it was realistic for me. It's fun. It's fun.
So it's just not realistic enough to offend you, or something.
Yeah,
along those lines.
Yeah, and it's World War II. Also, you got to put it in context of where historically it takes place. That was 50, 60 years ago. So it's more entertainment.
Okay, so do you think directors have a little more leeway if the war is more far removed in terms of history, in terms of how they treat the material?
It just depends what you're trying to... If you're going to use war as a backdrop, then...
Yeah.
Certainly there's a lot of themes that can be played with that as a backdrop. It's either a backdrop or it's the main theme. Decide what is it about that backdrop that you either want to criticize or ridicule or have it come to life in all its realism. War Horse, for example, that was a novel. That there was no horse in World War I that was running around loose in the front lines. But it was believable. It was believable, and I think we want to believe that something like that could have happened. And the people were portrayed very realistically. Very, their human qualities were there. So the director has to decide what aspect of the war is going to play into the movie to either help it complement the plot, the theme, and the role of the actors, or whether it's going to pull it apart and abuse of that relationship, abuse in terms of not portraying it properly. Unless you're going to do a comedy, then you can use MASH.
Yeah. One last thing before we wrap up. What was your favorite war film? Something a little that requires more of a...
The number one?
Yeah, if you have one.
A Bridge Too Far.
A Bridge Too Far.
Yeah.
Check it out. Bridge Too Far.
Because it has the best scene of American paratroopers and British paratroopers actually jumping from real aircraft. There was no computer animation. They actually had footage of
Sean Connery jumped off. Is that the one with Sean Connery?
I don't know if Sean Connery jumped.
Michael Caine.
He may have airlanded in one of the gliders.
Yeah.
Michael Caine certainly jumped.
Yeah.
He was a British para. Good movie. A lot of great acting, and also a great theme. I love this theme: the limits of military power. The limits of military intervention. A bridge too far. Sometimes you just
right there in the title. Yeah.
Just you can't do it all.
Well, as you'll know, I've always thought that we tried to go a bridge too far.
That's the limits of military intervention. Nice. A great theme, by the way.
Good theme.
I think it's a wonderful theme. You can't expect the military to always be able to resolve your political problems.
Indeed. Maybe diplomacy may be the best way.
Absolutely. I'm a big proponent of diplomacy
in some situations.
As the first means of resolving problems.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Victor Rosello, for joining us at our panel. And thank you, Lauren Sue and Lizzy Pelletier, for helping me ask questions. Perhaps I need to rethink my opinion of Apocalypse Now.
I think you should.
Yeah. 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 I hadn't taken all of that into consideration, but I will definitely check out A Bridge Too Far and let you know what I think about it. You should too, viewers. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Victor Rosello, for offering us such wonderful insights. Thank you, Lauren Sue and Lizzy Pelletier, for helping me ask questions. And until next time, you are all dismissed. Maggots.